talk a little bit about language registers. You're going to watch two sets of videos, one in ASL and one in English, and those videos have a person speaking in the English and signing in the ASL video across a range of registers, and this is the sign we use. It's not an up-down, it's not this, it's a range of registers because there is no high or low register. It's frozen, formal, consultative, informal, some people call it casual, and intimate. Intimate is not as in intimate partners or having sexual relationships. Intimate is marked by I'm sure you have friends who you could say one word and they understand what you're talking about, or somebody finishes your sentences. That's an intimate register. So we can't interpret intimate register. You just can't, because you can't understand it. If somebody says, yeah, last week, well, I can sign those words, but I don't know what they mean because I don't know what happened last week. But the two people who are saying it do know what happened last week. So in a mental health setting, a counseling setting, for example, if it's a family dynamic, husband-wife, family counseling, there's a lot of intimate register, and all we can do is narrate what's happening. So she's now told him last week, and I can't say what it means because I don't know. So intimate we can't interpret. Informal, which is the kind of conversation or interaction you'd have that has overlap, nobody has power, the sentences are very short, you're not really you're not paying attention to grammar or word choices so much. And informal can happen in anywhere. It can happen in your home, at a restaurant, with friends, in a car. We do a majority of our communication in informal register. A majority of your everyday communication is in informal register. Consultative is marked by one person having more power than the others, and that could be expert power, position power, any number of the kinds of powers. So the power in consultative register, though, there is turn taking, but the person with power gives permission. So for example, in a classroom and maybe a therapist office, the person with the expert knowledge or the power gives permission to speak, and usually the people without the power request permission to speak. They request the floor and they're given the floor. Hence, raise your hand and then you call on the person to speak. There are a lot of things that mark these registers, and I'm just going through them very quickly. But I will say that the majority of the work interpreters do is in consultative setting. So we have an issue here because the bulk of our experience is informal, but the bulk of our work is going to be in consultative. So that's really something for you to watch, because if your body of experience is informal, but the work needs to be consultative, very often you'll bring in aspects of informal language use into a consultative interpretation, consultative register. So you have to be really careful that you're using consultative register in a consultative setting. Consultative settings are dictated by a number of things. Like I said, somebody has power, there's distance between the people. Unlike informal, there's less distance between people. They could be side by side, they could be holding hands, they could be touching, they could be sitting very closely, but the distance is less. This could have a desk between them, but it definitely has more distance. The words are beginning to be enunciated clearly because there's a need to explain something or teach something, sell something, that kind of phenomena. So consultative register is also marked by eye gaze. All registers are marked by eye gaze. So informal, of course, would be pretty much direct eye contact, not locked on, but direct eye contact. Consultative is more of a sweeping, but to check in. So if it's a teacher, for example, in a consultative setting, and you'll watch this in some of the video work, they'll sweep to sort of check in, and there's an instant, just a quick second where they lock on just to make sure that people understand. It still is sweeping, but not like formal. Formal is just sweeping. It doesn't look at anybody because it doesn't want anybody to respond. So consultative does want to check in and make sure people are following. Formal is no eye gaze with any specific person, which is odd when deaf people are using interpreters in a formal setting, because very often you'll see them checking in to make sure that the interpreter is following them okay. So that's different than what you'll see with a speaker of English or a speaker of another spoken language. So formal is usually marked by having a stage or even more distant. The sentence length is longer. The word choices are different. They're enunciated differently. There's attention to grammar. There's usually coat and tie or dress clothes. Consultative has that, but a little less stringent. I'm trying not to use more or less in any of these explanations because they're neither more or less of anything. They just are what they are. Formal register usually has some multimedia happening, things like that. Frozen register is marked by having text that doesn't change. So the Pledge of Allegiance, the Star Spangled Banner, hymns, prayers, things that do not change at all. And so they're uttered again the same way every time. What's interesting about the difference between formal, this is how you'll know the difference. If I said just the two words, I pledge, all of you would be able to finish that sentence. You would be able to finish the entire allegiance to the flag. That's formal. Everybody has access to it. Everybody knows it. Conversely, like I gave you the example a little bit ago, if somebody could say, yeah, purple, or last week, and they both would know what they meant, but I would have to have much more information to be able to interpret that because I can't access it. So I want you to watch those videos and just identify aspects of register that change. Don't use the words more or less. Those aren't ways to define what you're seeing in the register. So identify what you see. Describe what you see or hear, and for each of the registers. You won't see an example of formal, and you may see in one of them a couple of examples of one register, so they might be two. They're fun to watch, especially when you get over to the intimate register. But each one of them is using the same topic, and they're varying the way that they deliver the topic based on the register. So watch those. Fill out the form just to get an idea of the kinds of things you see that make language registers different in the way that we convey language. Have fun with that.